I'm Elaine Douvas, and I'm originally from Michigan. All I ever wanted to do was have a life in music. Classical music has captivated me since ballet class when I was 6 years old. I've been an artist faculty member of Aspen for 24 years, and during the year, I'm principal oboist of the Metropolitan Opera, a position I've held for 43 years. I'm also chairman of the woodwind department at Juilliard, where I've taught for 38 years. Summers at Aspen are a dream. Life is boiled down to just the things I love most. Playing an orchestra with old friends and fun new people, teaching talented, dedicated students, and my longtime hobby, figure skating. I love the rink at Aspen, where the coaches have patiently given me the same lesson several times a week for over 20 years. Today I'll be presenting 4 outstanding young oboists playing the most important oboe solos from the opera repertoire. These brilliant players are all on the brink of their careers and are now on hold as there are no orchestras playing, there's no freelance work, and no auditions for jobs. We're making the best of these times to learn the new technology, recording ourselves, making layered recordings with friends across the country, and spending many hours trying to sound good on Zoom. Everyone must now be a recording engineer. I, for one, never had time to learn these skills, so it's been a sudden new adventure. This is my sound stage. So neat, so clean. And here is the rest of the room, which my husband calls Elaine's Chamber of Horrors. There are 5 different devices pointing at me, wires, cables, and cords strung all over the room, and stuff goes wrong all the time, giving new meaning to the phrase, "I can't get out of the box." Opera is different from symphonic music in several ways. Operas are much longer. Some are 5 to 6 hours long. So opera players need stamina, mentally and physically. We are the distance runners of music. We are accompanying the singers, so we have to be ready to adjust all the time. They have a lot to do, wearing a costume, singing, moving, acting. Sometimes a beat is skipped, or different singers step in with new ideas. Listening, following, and matching are needed at every moment. But most of all, there's a story. We set the scene, we establish the character, we reach out to the audience in the dark and speak to them from the orchestra pit. I'm often asked, what is your favorite opera? Usually it's whatever I'm playing at the moment. Eugene Onegin, Die Frau in Schatten, Billy Budd. I forget how great are the unusual ones. But it is the Wagner that never wears off. It is so great to spend the day preparing for a 5 or 6 hour journey into medieval times. It is like actually living the Lord of the Rings or King Arthur's knights, and the music is just out of sight. There's so much to learn from the singers, which will certainly come out during this class. So I'd like to invite you into my world, the world of opera. Okay, this is Lucien Avalon, and he's going to play the important oboe solo from the beginning of Act 2 of Beethoven's Fidelio. So I've known Lucien since he was about 15 years old, is that right?
Yeah, about that.
And tell us something about where you studied and what you like to do when you're not playing the oboe.
I'm from Santa Fe, New Mexico, but I've been living in New York City for the past 5 years or so while I attend Juilliard and study with the incomparable Elaine Douvas. I want to just thank everyone for tuning into this cool, accessible new format for masterclasses. Because when this pandemic broke out, I was really disappointed not to be able to return to Aspen for a 4th summer. But I am very glad that they have been able to keep the music and the learning and community together. So I want to give a big thanks to everyone who made that possible. I'm already really missing the beautiful concerts and the inspiring rehearsals with awesome faculty, and the hiking, and of course going ice skating very regularly with Miss Douvas.
Lucian's a very high-level skater. I'm kind of an adult hobbyist, but it's very inspiring to skate with Lucian. And you also spent a couple years at the Interlochen Arts Academy, right?
Yes, I spent my 2 last years of high school.
All right, well, let's proceed to the music here. One thing about opera and anything that has words is that you simply have to know the words. You could get it very wrong if you don't know what they're talking about. So
Certainly.
I'm sure Lucian has studied this in immense detail. Why don't you tell us a bit about what the scene is and what emotions you're going to be portraying as you illuminate the Big Tenor Solo.
Yeah, so this solo comes near the beginning of Act 2, while Florestan lies a political prisoner. He's in the lowest depths of the worst dungeon in the castle, and he's expecting to be executed, so he's in pretty dire straits. And as the oboe enters, he has a vision of his love coming to find him and free him. So it's a moment of intense, hope and excitement and passion. And he imagines a strange breeze and seeing his lovely Leonore.
Okay, I mean, he's literally hallucinating from lack of food and water, and he's been kept in the dark. It's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
And yes, Leonore is his wife, and he doesn't know that she's disguised herself as a young boy and is coming, in actual fact, coming to save him.
Right.
But at the moment the oboe enters, this is where he says, "What is this light? What is this breeze?
Yeah.
I see an angel who looks like my wife, who's come to set me free." Okay, so make this beginning as magical as you can. Let's play all the way through the passage. Very nice. I will go down the list of all the things I liked about that. What makes this solo really difficult is playing it in the orchestra, because it's a held in tenor, it's the loudest voice, and it is so full of passion and so full of exuberance from the string section that the poor little oboe hardly has a chance to be heard. A really good conductor will keep the strings under control so that the oboe line can come through. But of course, one has to play this at an audition before you ever get to play it in an orchestra. So when you're playing alone in the room, you don't have to concern yourself quite so much with the extreme volume that's needed in real life. So we're going to play this for a room today. The next question is about the tempo, and the oboist is not really in charge of the tempo. If you're playing an audition by yourself, of course, you do have to make all the interpretive decisions yourself, but you must also try it at every possible speed, because it's really going to be up to either the tenor or the conductor, and the oboist just has to go along with it.
Right.
And I was looking through some old versions and found some pretty drastic extremes. I heard one where the quarter note was 104 and one where the quarter note was 132. I think somewhere in between would be my choice. Did you choose a tempo for yourself?
I personally like 120.
Okay, I thought what you did sounded very appropriate. Okay, let's go back. The tone is singing and rounded, and that's one of the most important things in trying to sound vocal. And to play in the opera, sounding vocal should be at the front of your mind all the time. Also, the quality of legato is super important, and you did that extremely well. All the up and down intervals sound smooth and singing and lovely. I think at the beginning you should try to build up a little more suspense by hanging back for a while and then putting a big surge just as you approach the high note. And then at the moment where it says diminuendo, remember that it should be full volume at the point of diminuendo, and at that point get gradually softer. So don't suddenly get soft, don't use it up too soon. Then the next exciting, the phrasing of the solo is by the bars. Each bar of quarter notes is complete in itself. So the low notes have to be nicely tucked under. You did that very nicely also. Then, leading up to the sudden piano, could you make the sudden piano more dramatic? I'm not sure the listener would have noticed it. Then, when you get to the end of the first phrase, which looks like it's about a dozen bars in, take a fresh start on that note. Maybe that's too much all at once, but let's try it again. Everything that I asked for was there. I like the holding back at the beginning, putting a little bit of surge each time you change notes so that it sounds grabbing and exciting. The sudden piano where he thinks of his wife and it sounds so sweet, that was also beautiful. Then we're going to skip ahead a little bit to the part where he's going, ein Engel. It's extremely important that you imitate the exact syllables that he's singing. If it sounds too staccato, it doesn't remind us of the words ein Engel, an angel, so like my wife. So let's start with the pickups to figure 9 where it says dolce. This point, the volume won't be extreme. From this point forward, you've got to really plant your feet on the floor and grit your support and hold the bell up and be a trumpet. It could notch up about 1 mark on the metronome, but nothing too drastic. Also, we should speak a bit about the accompaniment. What's going on in the strings?
The strings have this kind of bubbling offbeat rhythm. They keep dum, bum, 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 bum.
Yes,
really
so you're in a bit of a well, I don't want to use the word straitjacket, but you do have to stay with them because they have to put a note in between each one of your quarter notes.
Right.
So Ein Engel was beautiful. It's obvious you've heard this many times. You're well studied. So let's take from figure 10 to the end.
Sorry, this part doesn't have...
Oh, okay. It's where we stopped, where the printed crescendo is.
Yep.
And when you get to the part with the high Fs, now there are many people that just think this solo is all about high F. High F isn't that hard for us to do.
Yeah.
But whenever you have a high note, the high notes are sort of the home run of opera. And we never want to sound like we're playing a high note by just putting on a certain fingering. It has to have some suspense before it, some build-up, and then some danger, actually, where the listener's wondering if you're really going to go for the high note. And then when you do, there's more glory in the attainment of it.
Right. Okay.
And when you get to the part with the high Fs, you're doing this nicely also. Bum, 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 bum. There's kind of a roundness to both the start and the end of the note, which is also part of vocal style. We don't want to hear mechanical noises like tongue noise. Bum, 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 bum. Not tut, 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 tut. So let's start with the crescendo and go to the end. Playing, Lucian. I don't know if I said enough about the beautiful ring in your tone and the shapely slurs up and down and the vocal quality of the articulation, the inflections of speech, and those are really the fine points of Fidelio. It isn't just about high F.
Right. Thank you so much.
Well, I hope you get a chance to play this in an orchestra because it's all there.
Yes, me too.
Okay. Bravo.
Thank you.
This is Matt Langus. It would have been Matt's 4th summer at Aspen. And we're going to work on the famous Nile scene from Verdi's Aida. But first, Matt, would you tell them something about yourself and your musical journey and what you're doing now?
Sure. So I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin called Peshtigo, and I did my undergraduate degree at the Eastman School of Music, master's degree at Rice University, Shepherd School of Music, and I just finished a doctorate degree, a DMA, at the Butler School of Music at the University of Texas at Austin. As Ms. Douvas mentioned, this would have been my 4th summer at Aspen. I love coming to Aspen in the summer for many obvious reasons, but the really special thing about Aspen for me are the people that I've met there and the different things they've taught me, the diverse and wonderful faculty, and especially the wonderful peers that I have met at Aspen.
Okay, let's start our work on Aida. This is probably the most iconic oboe solo in the entire opera repertoire. And would you tell everybody a bit about the scene and the emotions of Aida that have been entrusted to the oboe?
Sure, yeah. The scene takes place at the kind of the beginning of Act 3, on the banks of the Nile River in Egypt. And Aida, who is an Ethiopian princess, is being held captive in Egypt. And this scene is where she's torn between love for her home country and her current love affair with her captor, Radames, the Prince of Egypt. When the oboe enters alone in this scene, what I'm trying to do is convey Aida's sense of like longing for home. And later in the scene, when the oboe line becomes more expressive and chromatic, I'm trying to bring that out. I'm trying to mirror Aida's internal conflict by probably increasing my intensity of my line and vibrato speed.
Okay, beautiful. Good. Let's work on this first section. That was so beautiful. I love the way that the set of 3 trills progressed each time. I think it's nice to reach for the upper neighbor and to minimize the lower neighbors. We don't want it to sound bogged down on the bottom. So if you can keep the D's buoyant, that would be good. You're right to play one grace note before the beat. I'm sure that's what he means with that odd-looking notation. Sometimes it's hard to make that little grace note heard at a distance. But when you're playing by yourself, I think you're showing it just the right amount and not too much.
Good.
In the second passage, I like very much that you were building up tension to the last of the high A's and then releasing it. That sounds very good. I would cast a vote for developing the first note until it bursts into the trills. I don't think it makes sense to retreat on that first long note.
Okay. Should there be any lift on the third beat?
I don't think I would call that a lift. You might mark it a little bit with a quickening of the vibrato, but
Exactly.
I wouldn't go away. I'd reach for the upper note. The first note, you have to sit there for a long time before coming in on it. It's really important, since it comes out of total silence, that there are no grains of spit and that the entrance is very smooth and without a bump from tongue noise. And that was a beautiful taper at the end, where Verdi writes, Lunga should be held very long, as she's saying, nevermore, nevermore, my pew, never see your country again. Let's do it once more, primarily for the lower neighbor thing.
Yeah.
And keep, the trills are difficult, it's hard not to get stuck on one of them, but see if you can keep that progression through the groups of trills. on to the next section.
Okay.
Which he's marked, well, there's a misprint in the music. It should be 8th note 92, and it says the same speed. 92 works nicely in this section.
Mm-hmm.
When I play that ascending scale passage, to me this is like the hot desert breeze blowing on my face. See if you can give it a little more elevation and a little more travel. In real life, it's not necessary to play the low note at 3 pianos the way it's marked. At an audition, if you play it very softly and show your low note control, that would get a little extra credit. Also, in real life, the singer never holds the note out that long. So you have to be ready to move whenever she moves.
Sure.
Let's try that section again for more like the desert breeze, and then when you get to the 16ths, more individual.
Okay.
Singing vibrato. It adds so much. Makes the tone sound warm and confident and expressive. Okay, so you have 3 times to play the beautiful melody. Let's skip to the end of this and do the very last one, which can be somewhat slower than the others, the most sad, the most far away. And then after you've played for 3 pages, you have to play the most difficult thing, the low notes at the end.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Starting at G high score?
Yes, and when you get to those low notes where she sings, "My pew," and you have to imitate it, copy the curve of the syllables just exactly as she does it.
Okay, sure.
To the low notes, the thing that's missing is the curve at the end of her first syllable. My pew. It gathers up a little bit.
Sure.
And be sure that you've got rounded, flexible sounding attacks. It mustn't sound stiff-legged after what she sings. And see if you can get more taper on the end of the C.
Okay.
That'll pass.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, let's go on to the other section of this piece. So a little later on, there's another big passage for oboe alone. Tell us what's going on here.
So yeah, in this passage later in Act 3, Aida's father, who's the king of Egypt, is demanding of her, or has demanded of her, that she find out from her lover the place where the Egyptian army is hiding, so that his troops, the Ethiopian troops, can ambush them. Aida does not want to do this. She's very torn, but she agrees because she's very loyal to her father. And this oboe solo, to me, represents Aida both trying to seduce her lover Radames to run away with her, to flee, but also to get out of him his plans for his army, for her father.
Okay, the last thing that happens before you come in is that she suggested that they run away.
Mm-hmm.
And he practically screams, "Fugire!" He thinks this would be absolutely treasonous. So then she goes on to kind of trick him into it. So there is something kind of insincere about this passage. She's trying to worm a secret out of him also. So sound a little bit conniving. Okay, very nice. It sounds smooth and you're doing a nice job of getting the low Ds out. Usually I'm requested to play the second statement softer than the first. So go ahead and make yourself comfortable on the first one,
Okay.
but the whole time you should be thinking about how soft do I dare go in the second one. There are a lot of odd accents in this passage, and Verdi accents quite often mean overhold the note. It certainly doesn't mean to strike it or push it. There are vibrato notes and overhold notes. Matt, also make sure in the long notes that you keep traveling. Sometimes they sound slightly static or they're retreating. I think, again, it's a good thing to develop the long notes into the moving notes.
Okay.
Beautiful playing, Matt. You've studied the piece very well, and you're conveying the emotions of the scenes extremely well. It's a beautiful singing, clear tone, and beautiful traveling, spinning vibrato. Okay, a pleasure to work with you on these.
Yeah, thank you so much for coaching me. It's nice to have some expert advice on these, really. It's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
This is Tamara Winston, and we're going to work on the beautiful oboe solo from Wagner's Parsifal. This is often played in concert form and known as the Good Friday spell. But first, Tamara, tell us about your musical background.
I grew up in Skokie, Illinois, right outside of Chicago, and I've spent the last 8 years in New York City, where I went to school at the Juilliard School and then the Mannes School of Music. And I just finished up my 2-year residency at Carnegie Hall's Ensemble Connect. This would have been my 5th summer at Aspen and my 3rd summer as the English Horn Fellow. I love going to Aspen because there's nothing better than playing music with wonderful people in the beautiful mountains. I also love and look forward to having a summer dedicated entirely to playing the English horn in orchestra, because this is not something I get to do a lot of during the year. Aspen is also a really special place for my dog Charlie. He loves to hike, and it's just definitely the highlight of his year.
All right, let's begin our work. It's very hard to describe what's going on in Parsifal. This is a mystical and, Wagner didn't even want to call it an opera. Can you explain to us why this is such a special opera and what's going on in this scene and the role of the oboe?
The intricate plot of Wagner's Parsifal tells the story of the knights who, at their castle in Spain, are guarding the Holy Grail, which is the chalice that holds Christ's blood. And they're also guarding the spear that pierced Christ's side. And the opera shows the hardships that occur to the knights as retribution for their sins, predominantly losing possession of the spear. And it also shows us how Parsifal arrives and, after many, many hardships, eventually sets things right. And it falls in Act 3, Scene 1, and Parsifal is now set to become the leader of the knights because he has regained possession of the spear. The stage direction reads, "He gazes in gentle rapture on wood and meadow, which are now glowing in the morning light." And you'll hear when I play the excerpt that I reach this really beautiful soaring high note that I hold for a while, and Parsifal enters and he sings right then, "How fair seem the meadows today." And then later a senior knight responds, "That is the magic of Good Friday, my lord." Just like in a lot of Wagner's operas, there's leitmotifs, which are musical themes that represent specific dramatic ideas or objects. And in the Good Friday music, the Good Friday theme is gifted to the oboe, which is the excerpt I will be playing today, and it's the perfect combination of calm and expressive.
I always picture the meadows and how the music before it is portraying everything from the depths of despair and pain to something noble and heroic, and then it comes to an absolute hush before the oboe comes in, and then it's as if everything is just growing from nothing.
Yeah.
It's so hard to make this entrance. I hand that over to you.
Okay.
Was beautiful, Tamara. The entrance was so smooth at the beginning, and of course you have to do this for about 6 hours in Parsifal. All the entrances are cushioned and sneaky, but this one is particularly reverential, and one doesn't want to disturb the mood by having anything go wrong with the smooth attack. That was lovely. Also, I was waiting to see where you would breathe, and you didn't. You're absolutely masterful with circular breathing, like a glass blower. Fantastic. And I do that too, but I wasn't always able to circular breathe. So we should talk about where you would breathe if you were coaching somebody who doesn't have that technique. And I would suggest that you do it where Wagner ends the slur. So, dee da dee da da dee dee. I think you can do it in a way that doesn't interrupt the flow. You don't really want to end it there. So give it a bit of a lift and then go on. All right, so since you do that so well, what are we going to work on? I think because you're signifying rebirth, regrowth, redemption, that it should flow a little more. That you could pick up the tempo slightly and reach more for the upper intervals. Soft pedal the return to D sharp. Treat it as a phrase ending, a toned phrase ending. And then reach for the dee or dee or. And then when you get to the 2/8 notes, dee or do, I would give each of those kind of a tenuto line where you put some weight expression on each of the 8th notes. Okay, we're trying something new here. We're experiencing a few Zoom problems. Okay, tomorrow would you try the passage once more and try a more shimmery vibrato, something faster, something that conveys the fragility and the yearning and the hope. And show some of the other lovely passages in this scene.
Okay.
Your next entrance. Put a lot of content in the slur. Sending out the F sharp with your shimmery vibrato so that it makes a nice continuity. Let's skip to measure figure 260. it should take on some urgency here. You take the part away from the clarinet and give it back. Let's try the passage that's marked Ausdrucksvoll on line 5 and put a big upward sweep in the slur and then just keep extending the long E, searching. Passage, which is marked with both dots and slurs. This is sort of what I was encouraging you to do in the beginning. It's just a slur. Bom, bom, bom. Individual weight. Skip to the phrase that says DIM, diminuendo under it. Where do you want the stress in the 4-note phrase?
The E to the D.
Yes, more on the E, less on the D. Let's try that again. And be sure to vibrate your single 8th note, that it's very melodic. Delicate and beautiful. Now you get to play this passage in another key, a fresh and beautiful key that's somewhat easier than the first time. Beautiful. This is Bobby Nunez, and we're going to work on the solo passages from Verdi's Rigoletto. But first I'd like Bobby to tell you a bit about his musical background.
I'm from Mesa, Arizona. I just graduated from the Juilliard School studying with Elaine Douvas. I have been to Aspen 3 summers so far, and I absolutely love it because I've made incredible friends there, and you get to play with them every single day. It's such a beautiful place to be, and there's tons of hiking and amazing restaurants, and it's just, it's really a perfect place to be for the summer.
All right, well, let's get over to the music. Would you please tell the audience what's going on in this scene from Rigoletto?
So in this scene, it is Gilda's aria, and she is Rigoletto's daughter. Rigoletto is the hunchback. There's the court jester to a very evil man who is the Duke of Mantua. Here, Gilda has been carried off by the Duke's men and is raped by the Duke. She then has to tell her father that she's in love with a mysterious man that she met, who had lied to her, telling her that he was a poor student when actually he was the Duke. In this passage, she's extremely embarrassed and distraught, humiliated at what has happened, and I think that this solo tries to convey that.
And yet she's still in love with him through
And
this. Okay, all right. Let's go through the whole passage, please. You already sound quite beautiful in this. I wish you guys would play a little bit worse so I've got something to say. Anyway, let's go back and do it phrase by phrase, and I'll explain what's difficult about Rigoletto. There are two things I'd like to work on in this solo. The first is about Verdi's accents. I spoke about that earlier in this class when I was coaching Aida. Often accents in Verdi mean to overhold the note. So there's an accent on the very first note of this solo. Imitating the words that she sings. Tutta la festa al tempio. So you're right to overhold the first note. And the same on the next phrase. The other thing I'd like to work on here is the slur shape. A slight arch shape to the downward slurs. Bring the second to the last note up to a crest and set down gently on the low note. Would you show us a few of those on each of the downward slurs? This is frequently the first excerpt on the audition. I think I've been part of about 8 auditions since I joined the Met so many years ago. We always start with this one. It's hard to start on the note G. You have to sit there after you've tongued the heck out of your reed for a whole page, and then you sit there for a while the singers chat with each other, and then you start on G. There are so many solos that begin on G. G is just a difficult note. Some years ago I decided that I would just play G every time I pick up the oboe and get over fear of this note. Let's go on to the second phrase. There's a tradition to hold the high A at the end, which you've adopted probably from your listening study, and it's nice, and you're using your vibrato nicely on the 2 notes after that also. It's hard to make it sound natural, and it's hard not to get stuck on it when the conductor's waiting for you to move and you're waiting for him to move also. In the second phrase, you have to make up your mind what you're going to do with the sequences, the repeat of the motif. On the second one, should you play more because it's stepping up, or should you play less as an echo? Frequently the conductors gesture for an echo there. It's not my first choice of what to do. I would prefer to play more on the second one and build up. Would you show us both ways? echo. Very nice. Such lovely life in the tone. On the third, well, I guess I should ask your opinion about that. Which one did you like better?
I think for me, I like gaining intensity as it goes on. That's just how it feels to me.
It
Um,
seems like a more natural thing to do.
yeah, yeah.
Still, it's our job to make the conductor's idea sound good. So if they put the brakes on there and ask for an echo, you do it. Okay, the third phrase, this is where she's explaining how the men carried her off. So even though it's not marked to play faster, it's right that you do so. So indicate something about their triumph carrying her off. Nice syncopated accents there. Ba 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 bee. Sounds good. And good counting on the long notes. We could now do other passages from the first act of Rigoletto, or we could do Italian in Algiers. Would you prefer that?
Yeah, let's do Italian Algiers.
Okay. Nice Rossini overture. All right, let's see if we can capture something fun and spontaneous here. Don't forget this is a comic opera. And sing to yourself the introduction, which should be full of mischief. Can you sing us a bit of the introduction at the tempo you like?
Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum.
Okay, very nice. And then when the oboe comes in and fits in all these swirling notes, it should sound very sleight of hand and not too romanticized.
Sure.
Tricky. Okay, let's go. Okay, very nice. And I like this tempo. It's fresh and it's witty and not overly romanticized. You could get a little more of the anticipation high C. Dee, da, da, dee, dee, dee. And you could slip in a little tenuto rubato in the next groups of 6 as long as you keep the tempo. Could you spread out the turn notes a little bit more so they're not too much in a rhythmic formula?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent, beautiful. They've come out with some kind of scholarly edition of this piece with a weird note in it. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. A couple times I've been asked to play that, and I'm embarrassed to do it. This just can't be right. But of course, it's our job to make the conductor's idea sound good. Let's go on to the next passage. It's also kind of traditional to put a dotted rhythm in this, so go ahead and do that. Not written that way in my part here, but I think it sounds more mischievous and more fun. Good. And since the oboe goes first, maybe the clarinet will copy you. All right, let's do a little of the Allegro. Excellent. Very nice ricochet tonguing, where you sort of produce 3 quick notes on one decaying puff of air. It makes a beautiful ring in the last 8th note. Okay, let's go on to the next solo passage. Okay, let's spend a few minutes on this. This should sound really fun and full of good humor. Snap the 16ths a little bit more. Doing ba bottom and delay the second one so it's got more fling. So try something like that. Play louder on the second phrase and drop back for the third one so that you can accumulate through the triplets. In the triplets, we want to hear all 3 notes equally and not disturb the rhythm with the slurs. This is a traditional articulation. Again, it's not really what it says in the part, but I don't think Rossini was known for being a careful man. I don't think his articulations are sacred. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is the traditional articulation. Would you try the triplets first for equality of the 3 notes and perkiness of the staccato? And the other set of triplets? Make more space after the staccato note. The third one is still too long. Yes, I like that better. We hear all 3 notes, and you have to use a kind of a choppy one. Dee-yata-dee-yata-dee-yata-dee-yata-dee, where you say something inside the slur. Okay, let's do the whole passage again. Put enough mischief and enough fling in the 16th notes. Good. Very nice. Okay, let's do the last passage with its traditional articulation. Excellent. That sounds full of mischief. I think the really important thing on these comic operas is just to make sure that it sounds like something that could be an overture to a comic opera. It shouldn't sound all romanticized and super expressive.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you so much.
It's a great pleasure to coach these wonderful young musicians. I hope you've enjoyed a glimpse into the world of opera, and we can't wait until we can all play music again together with real people in real concert halls and in the beautiful mountains of Aspen.